All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another video tutorial for client-side web development. And as part of Module 8, Enhancing a Website with Multimedia, we'll be conducting the Tutorial 8.1 Quick Check Quiz for marks. Okay, so we're going to go through this together and just go through all the questions. We have questions 1 through 8 here. So let's begin. So let's start at question 1. What is the difference between a codec and a container? So we know that a codec will encode and decode or compress and decompress an audio or video file. And this just makes it efficient to transfer audio and video files, to play them, and things like that. Okay, so we also have this concept of a container. So codecs are placed within a container that handles the packaging, transportation, and presentation of data. A container is the file format identified by the extension. Thus, if we look at the most common extensions, we see MP3, MP4. Those are the most dominant, but we have other ones like AAC, OGG, or OGG, that's open source, WAV files, and so on. Okay. So what's the difference between a codec and a container? So a codec is a utility that essentially is used to encode and decode data, in this case, audio or video files. And the container is the file that contains the codec. Contains a codec and handles the packaging, transportation. Whoops, let's put a comma there. Transportation and presentation of the data. Okay, so the codec will live inside this container, and again, this is reflected by the file extension itself. Okay, so very important to note. That is the answer to question 1. All right, so let's keep moving. So question 2, what's the difference between lossy and lossless compression? Well, we learned that in our lecture. So lossy compression will remove data that is non-essential. Essentially, and they give an example for us, and that one example was, for instance, sounds that the human ear cannot even register or hear. So it's just going to get rid of that. Okay, so lossy compression will remove data that is non-essential. Lossless compression will simply remove redundant data. Okay, and we had an example given to us where perhaps there are 3 characters that are the same, like 3 A's, for instance. Instead of writing the 3 A's as separate characters, you would just go, for instance, A3, okay? And that compresses the data down. And if you do that across the whole file, then you get a pretty good compression, but you're not losing any data. You're just making it more efficient for use, okay? All right, so that's a distinction there between the two. Let's move on to question 3. So what are 4 sound formats that are used for web audio? So we have, well, let's just use the examples that we were given. So we have MP3, OGG, WAV, and just one other here, AAC. Okay. And if you want to learn more about them, you can go to W3 Schools. They have information on the different audio formats and what browsers support them and so on. Okay, but these are the extensions. So essentially, they reflect the container that holds the codec inside. Okay. All right, nice and easy. Let's move on to question 4 now. Provide code to play the audio clip soundtrack MP3 as a background sound that plays continuously when the page is opened by the browser. Okay, so it's telling us essentially to loop an audio file. Okay, so we're going to have a source, soundtrack, MP3, and this would be a local file. If not, it would be the URL. So we have an audio tag which takes the source attribute. We just link it to the local file, in this case soundtrack.mp3, and we use the autoplay and loop attributes to get this video working as soon as the user lands on the page. And it will not stop. It has this loop attribute. It'll keep going ad infinitum. Okay. And you can do this for video tags as well. All right. So that's the answer to question 4. Let's move on to 5 now. So provide code to insert cp_dance.mp3 audio file, have the browser display the media player controls. So that should be easy. Okay, so once again, we have the audio file or the audio tag, and it's just a matter of getting the file name correct. And you'd be surprised, sometimes we slip up and get the syntax wrong. So just double check that. But essentially, that's all you're doing is the same audio tag, but you're using the controls attribute. And what that does is, let's see if I can find. What that does is it will show the controls on a video, essentially. So we don't have to program that. So play, pause, volume controls, timeline, all that stuff, okay? So that'll be good for the audio controls. All right, question number 6 now. It says supplement the code from the previous step to allow the browser to choose between the cp_dance mp3 and cp_dance OGG files. So we have 2 OGG files, and the reason why we would do this is essentially we want a code for compatibility. So we know that users are going to be using all sorts of different browsers. So that means we have to, we have to code for compatibility. So we want these both of these files to be used in certain cases. And how do we achieve that? Well, the syntax is a little bit different. So in this case, we're going to use opening and closing audio tags, okay? And basically, we have what's called a source tag. And the source tag is going to take our actual file names one by one. So we'll do one for MP3, and we'll do one for the OGG file. Okay. So it's just a little bit different syntax, but you can see it's quite simple. Okay. Okay. So there's just one distinction we have to make here. So there is an added attribute, and that's called type. So the type attribute is what's called a MIME type, okay? And you'll hear this used for videos as well. We're declaring the actual MIME type of the file, in this case, the file extension, and it corresponds essentially to the container of the file. Whoops, that should be OGG. And this allows different browsers to play the supported files, okay? So if we have a browser, whether it's Safari, Mozilla Firefox. They're going to support different codecs and different formats. And so if we code with compatibility in mind, we can include both files and ensure that the user will be able to interact with the media. Okay. Very important, this type attribute, also called a MIME type. We're declaring this first bit here. Well, what's the type? What's the nature of the file? In this case, an audio track. And then finally, the extension we declare. Okay. So that would be the answer to question 6. Oh, and we can also put in controls here up at the top because we want users to be able to pause and play and seek through the track as well. Okay. All right. So our introduction to the source tag here. And of course, this would also work in similar fashion to a video. Okay, let's move on to question 7 now. So supplement the code from the previous step to have the browser apply the code P. Your browser must support HTML5 to play this audio. If the browser does not support the HTML audio element. Okay, so what this means is you're going to have users that whose browsers are not supported. So we have to code for that too. So you always want to code for certain eventualities or things like that. And users are bound to have incompatible browsers and setups, okay? So what question 7 is asking us is supplement the code from the previous step. So let's go back to question 6. Copy it, okay? Right-click copy or Control-C. And paste that into question 7. But now it's saying we need a control if nothing is happening. Okay, if none of these files are supported by the browser, well, we need to display essentially an error message for the user. And we do this by just using a simple paragraph tag. So your browser must support HTML5 to play this audio. Okay, and what this does is the browser will go through these 2 files. Okay, and if it doesn't support any of them, it will default or fall back on this message here, and this will just be presented on a new line due to the p tags. Okay. All right, nice and simple there. All right, and in similar fashion, you do this with the video controls as well. All right, so audio, video, very similar in syntax, if not the same. Okay. All right, so let's move to question 8, the final question in the 8.1 quick check. Provide HTML code to insert the cp_dance mp3 file using the embed element. Okay. Assume that the file will be played by Apple's QuickTime Player, displaying the controls on the page. Set the width of the player to 350 pixels and the height to 40 pixels. So with the video tags, you can essentially set the set the height and width with the height and width attributes. And instead of using video or audio, we can use an embed tag. And essentially just plug in the file, whether it's a video or audio, and it will play on the page. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Okay, so we have embed. Okay, we have the embed tag, and then we're going to use the source attribute. In this case, it's just linking to the file once again. And then here we declare a type. Okay, so the embed tag is capable, but we also need to declare, okay, well, what kind of file is this? In this case, it's an audio MP3. We know this just by looking at, the extension here, which should also be MP3. And we can set the width and height attributes as well. So width, 350 pixels, and we don't put P because it already recognizes this as pixels. And we're just going to put 40 for the height as well. But we're not done. We have this controllers, and we're going to set this to yes. And the reason why we do this is because this is Apple's QuickTime Player, and this is how we would engage the controls on the page, okay? So we're embedding the element, and you can envision or imagine different sort of players, whether it's Apple or Chrome or different sort of plugins in which we can enable these controls or these features. But keep in mind, Web 2.0 and HTML5 in particular has a lot of these features built in. So seldom are we using third-party plugins or something like that, okay? So that is the answer to question 8, and that actually wraps up tutorial 8.1. I hope everyone enjoyed and learned a thing or two, so thank you very much. Just make sure to submit for grading, and we'll see you next time.